Cool. So let's get cracking. I have put everyone on mute. If you do want to speak up, feel free, but don't forget you've got the chat box here to ask any questions, queries. So what we're going to talk about tonight, we're not going to talk about much. We're going to go through a question. Actually, we're going to go through lots of questions, and it's all about accruals and prepayments, which we did as part of task 3, but we're also going to cover deferred and prepaid income, which is a subject that students really do struggle with. They really don't like it. So we're going to do some lots of questions on them. We're just going to go through them till 8 o'clock tonight. So welcome to this session. I hope you're all well. Can everyone see my screen? I move that out of the way. Cool. I'm going to move these out of the way. So these are questions that I've written. So they're not in our materials. So if you want to buy our materials at £35 per unit, feel free. You're not wasting anything. But they're extra registered. But these are exam standard questions. These are the kind of questions that you will see in the exam. I wouldn't expect them to be that much more difficult than this. And as most of you have been with me for most of AVBK, I'm going to ask for a little bit of help in working through these. So let's look at the first one, accruals, accrued rent. So what information have we got? Now, in any AVBK question, but especially in accruals and prepayments, the most important thing is the year end. So here we have a 30th of September 2004 year end. You've got to get that clear in your head, because if you don't get that clear in your head, you will struggle, should we say. You will probably fail, to be honest. Then we've been given our opening balances. This is typical to the sort of thing you do see in AAT sample assessments. So we've got the opening balances as at the 1st of October 2003, our first figures from the beginning of the year. So what I would suggest is don't start looking at rent and looking at the opening balance for prepaid insurance. Stick to one expense for now. And can no one see anything? You can't see anything at all. Some people can, some people can't, but more than one can't. Right, I'm going to stop the share. I'll go back, but interesting that some people can, lots of people can, but more than one people can. None, it's just one person. Right. I think that could be because some people have come out when I shared my screen to them and then came back in and I didn't share my screen to them. What about now? Can people see my screen? Yes. In fact, tell a lie. Can anyone not see my screen? Is a better question. And still more people coming in. Hand me at all. Cool. Right, it must be in that. Cool. Right. Hopefully everyone can see my screen now, and we carry on. Cool. So we've got our opening balances. We know it's a September 2004 year end. So I suggest let's look at rent, and then we'll worry about insurance. So accrued rent. That was something that last year we'd incurred the expense, but we'd not had the bill. So last year the double entry would be debit rent, because we want to show that expense, and credit accruals, because we've got a liability in the fact that we're going to have to pay £10,600 out for rent in the future. Does anybody want to have a stab at whether our opening accrued rent is going to be a credit or a debit? Natalie, Lenka, very quick off the mark. Sharon, yes. So you might see some questions where it says balance brought down or balance carried down, and it will be on the credit side. I don't like balance brought down or balance carried down because it's wrong. The balance carried down is never in the expense account. It comes down from the accruals account. So the double entry would be debit accruals, because that liability is now gone because we're going to get the bill, and then credit rent. So the narrative will be accruals, because that's where the other side of this account is. It's not brought down in the expense account. So £10,600. Is everyone okay as why we've credited our rent account with £10,600? Well, let me rephrase that. Is anybody not okay? Good. So I'll take silence as compliance. More people in, we're up to 50 now. So the next bit is what happens. We had payments totaling £34,060. Now, never, ever, ever, ever touch that, because that was physically went out to the bank. The bank must be correct. Never change that, because if you change that, it means your bank doesn't balance, and then everything is wrong. Don't do that. So whatever was paid, physically, what was paid. So we're going to get that in, get some easy marks. So that will be £34,060. Then we have received an invoice for £15,000. And now this is very, very typical of what's going to happen. It's not going to type with our year end. So it's for the quarter ended 31st of October 2004. And it was received in November 2004. Now remember, our year end is September 2004. So is this going to be an accrual, or is this going to be a prepayment? Do we need to get rid of some expense that we don't want, or do we need to bring in some expense that we are missing? That's right. So the invoice we received after our year end, so it won't be part of the £34,060 that we paid. So we won't, because you don't pay it before you get the bill. Why would you? You would just pay it when it's due. So none of that amount is related to, it is related, but it's not part of the 34,060. It relates, we need to bring it in with an accrual, as you are all correct. So we're going to put that on the debit side, because we want to increase the expense. Now, how much is that going to be? Remember, it is for the quarter ended October, and we are a September year end. So this is missing. That's right. So I always count my fingers. You never want to lose marks for miscounting months. It involves, I also work backwards, October, September, and August. Now we're a September year end. Now I know in your camera that's backwards. Let's try again. October, September, and August. So we want to bring in August and September. We don't want to bring in October because it's not our year end. But August and September do relate to our year end. So we want 2/3 of the £15,000. Now, don't take this as gospel, because I'll tell you this, and then the odds are you'll get a question in the exam and it will throw you. But normally these figures work out to nice numbers. So if you calculate, you're prorating an invoice and it doesn't work out to a nice number, check it. It could well be right, but normally it's a nice number. So here we want 2/3 of £15,000, which is £10,000. Then we just want to then calculate our profit and loss figure for the year, which is what we've been asked to do. So this is obviously going to go on the credit side. So that's P and L, P and 4, P and L. Where's my rubber gone to? And does anyone want to have a stab at what that figure is? Because we would total this up. This would be 44,060. And then 34,600, which actually, I can do that in my head almost. Take off the 10,600, gives us a figure of 33,460. 460, and that does balance off at 44,060. Cool. Was that fairly okay? Now, the next question we're going to look at is prepayments. So it's very, very similar. It's just the other way round. So again, let's just focus on insurance, because we've done rent anyway. So our last year, we prepaid some insurance. So that is insurance that we paid for last year, but it didn't relate to last year. It relates to this year. So it's an expense that we paid for last year, but prepaid. Is that opening figure of £2,200 going to be a debit or a credit? Is either there's some lag, you can read my mind, or you're amazingly quick at this. I'm impressed. That's right. It is an expense. It is a debit. Therefore, because it wants to increase the expense for this year, even though we've not paid it. So we have prepayments, because it would come from the prepayments account to be carried down in the prepayments. Remember, your ETB in task 5, you've got prepayments and accruals account. That's where the accruals and prepayments are carried down for. So that would be £2,200. Again, we've got payments for insurance of £12,000. It's got to be right. You cannot change that. So bank, again, that would be a debit because we increase expense of £12,000. Now this includes, so within the £12,000, we have paid £9,000 to insurance, which relates to the premium for the year ended 31st of March 2005. Now, remember, we are a September 2004 year end. How many months, and I'm going to give it away, though we are going to prepay it because we've already paid something in advance. How many months are we going to prepay? And be careful. That is correct. So we're going to prepay 6 months. And last question, debit or credit? That's all right. It's all right. It's 6 months, so 6/12 of £9,000 is 4,500. Right, my screen payment. I'll press this. And the reason why it is a credit is because we've paid it this year, and we don't want to show that expense because we've not incurred that expense. It will relate to next year. So the double entry would be debiting prepayments because we've got an asset in the fact we've got insurance we can use next year, or maybe if we cancel the policy, we could get £4,500 back from the insurance company. Maybe, maybe not. But we've got an asset in the fact that we can get some economic benefit in the future. So we debit prepayments, credit insurance with £4,500. I'm going to tidy it up. Because we want to not show that expense. So does anyone have a stab at the P&L figure? That's going to balance off £14,200. And 14,200 as Louise, Natalie and Martina have all got right. Take up 4,500 off 14,200 leaves us with 9,700. And we should check, but we know we're right, of £14,200 on there. Cool. That was not too bad. How does everyone feel about accruals and prepayments? Because I'm just conscious of time, and what I'd really like to do is look at accrued and deferred income. Now, the narrative for prepayment is a good answer. You could put reversal. In reality, I don't know how many of you work in practice. I used to work in practice. We used to use a bit of software called Iris Accounts Production. Anyone use Iris? It's a really good piece of software, not cheap. So what we used, that automatically reversed our prepayments and accruals from the previous year, and that would be our opening trial balance. So that actually would have narrative of opening reversal. And then what you would actually do is when you put your adjustments in, you'd put them on the last day of the financial year. So the opening reversal would be on the 1st of October, it would be here, and it would say opening balance reversal. And then you would put your closing prepayments or accrual in. And actually the narrative would be prepayments, and you actually would see journal 36 from your journals schedule, just so you could identify that back to the working papers. Now, in the exam, you're not going to do that. In the exam, it will just say, you'll get a drop-down box. So, and only one will be correct. So don't worry about different terminology. You need to know different terminology because we use different terminology in the real world, like balance sheet, and we use statement of financial position, like debtors, trade receivables, you know, sales ledger control. It all means the same thing. So just be careful. But in the exam, you'll just put it, you'll choose the opening thing. And balance brought down is just rubbish. AAT allow that, and it really grates me. It is rubbish. It would not be brought down in the insurance account. It would be brought down in prepayments, and then you would then reverse that, and you see debit So you'd credit prepayments to get rid of the asset you've got because you've used insurance, and then debit the insurance expense. That's how you do it in the real world. That's how we teach it because it's right. So it would come from the prepayments account. So then you don't have to clarify that one's an opening prepayment reversal and one's an opening prepayment accrual. You just use the same thing. That is a very good question. Would we ever have to prepare the prepayment or accruals account? There is no reason why not, but I've never heard of it, and I think it's unlikely. There's no reason why you shouldn't be able to, but the thing is, it's not very exciting, if I'm being honest, because you'll get a balance brought down, and you clear that off, and then you put another closing prepayment in and carry it down. There's no working out the profit and loss figure. It's just a bit boring. But in theory, you should be able to do it, and there's no reason why they couldn't ask you to do it, but I don't think it would ever happen because it's not particularly testing from an examiner's point of view. Cool, what time is it now? 20 past, right. Should we move on to some deferred income and accrued income ones? And then if we've got time, we can come back to these if you want, because I think they are far more useful than accruals payments, because I think everyone's doing really well on these. In fact, let me rephrase that. Anyone objects? Because I think this is more interesting. Cool. I'll move that over there. Cool. Can everyone see my screen? I presume we still can. Yeah. So this is all about accrued and deferred income, and we didn't do this the other week when we went through task 3 because the AAT didn't have it. But there's no reason why it can't come up. So just beware. Let me mute everyone. Mute everyone. So we have, let's get it clear in our head again, a 31st of July 2008 year end. And we can ignore VAT. You'll never get VAT in accruals with prepayments questions. We're not looking for that, so you'll never have to deal with VAT. And also, when you accrue in prepayments, if the business is VAT registered, you just do the net figures anyway, and it doesn't really affect VAT. But just about clarification, in this task, never worry about VAT. So as at the 1st of August 2007, which is our opening year end, we had deferred rental income of £10,600. So that was rental income that the business received last year, but they hadn't earned it as yet. Perhaps they've been paid in advance for the rent. Someone had paid like a full year's worth of rent. I don't know, but that's what's happened. It's been deferred. So this is rental income that we want to show this year, even though we've not been paid for it. So is this going to go on the credit side or the debit side of our rent account? That's right. So it's the opposite of what we've just been doing. So rather than increasing an expense, we are increasing a income because we've earned this money. And now we need to recognize it because in theory, depending on the terms of our lease, if that person came to the 1st of August 2007 and went, I'm leaving your building or whatever I'm renting, and I want my money back. So it is at this point a liability. So what we would have done at the end of last year is debit rental income to reduce the income account because we've not earned that money yet, and then credit deferred income. Now, deferred income is a liability account. You might see it referred to as prepaid income in the AAT exam sometimes. I don't like that terminology. I just think it doesn't really explain what it really is. It gets confused with prepaid expenses. Deferred income is so much clearer in the fact that what are you doing? I'm not recognizing that income. I'm going to might potentially have to pay it back. So the double entry would be debit rental income to reduce income, and then credit deferred income to show as at the year end, we have a liability. In fact, we may have to pay it back. Then when we reverse it, in our current year, we've earned the money. We're going to debit deferred income to show that we now don't have that liability. People have had the use of our building and they can't get the money back, and we've earned the money. So we would then credit rental income. So again, our narrative would be deferred income, because that's where it comes from. It comes from it carried down, or brought down, sorry, I should say, in the deferred income account, and it'd be £10,600. Then we've got the cash book showing rental income of £84,200. We physically received it. We cannot do anything with that. Yes, Sarah. So this is accrued income. So this is money that we are earning. It's not rental expense, and sometimes you get the same confusion with interest earned and interest paid. So this is rental income, and at the beginning of the year we had some deferred income, whereas accrued income is the other way around, and we might see that in a question. I think we do. Accrued income is where we've earned it but not been paid as yet, so we want to recognize the fact that A, someone owes us some money, and B, we've earned some money. However, that's not the case in this question. This is deferred. So accrued income is when you've earned it but not been paid it, or not invoiced as yet. Because if you'd invoiced it, it would actually show up in your rental income account through your sales ledger control. So next thing is bank. We've got to get the bank correct. So this is income. I hope you all know that income is going to be a credit because it reduces the amount that we have earned. So the bank would be, and we never amend the bank figure, £84,200. So the next bit of information we've got, within the £84,200, this includes rent for the period 1st of June to the 31st of August. Now we are a July year end. So now this is a bit more tricky. We've had money that we've received in advance. What are we going to do? Are we going to accrue for 1 month, or are we going to defer 2? That's right. So we physically received June, July, and August. June and July, in fact, all that income is in our year, and that is fine. Did I say defer 2? All right. So we physically received June and July and August. Now I should have said accrue 2 or defer 1, but the defer 1 is the answer. So we're going to allow June to stay where it is. Are we going to allow July to stay where it is? August, we don't want. We need to get rid. So that is going to be deferred. So we've received money in advance. So we've got a liability of 1 month. So the double entry would be credit deferred income, because we've got a liability, and debit rental income, because we don't want to show August. We're quite happy with June and July's. We want rid of August. So we're going to debit deferred income with a pen. And yeah, deferred income is the same as prepaid income, except you're using terminology that I don't like, and I'll think less of you. Prepaid income is exactly the same. It's income you've had in advance. I just don't like the terminology. Deferred is so much clearer, and it's exactly clear what you are doing. Whereas prepaid it gets confused with prepayments. I just don't like it. But in the exam, that could come up. Prepaid income is deferred income. I just don't like it. We don't use it in the real world. Don't like it. And I trust everyone has divided 12,480 by 3 correctly. So we're going to defer. Where's my mouse gone? There's more people coming in. £4,160. And remember, this is a income account, so the profit and loss figure will go on the debit side that we're going to write off to our statement of profit and loss. Does everyone have a go on the saving calculating it on what figure are we going to write off to profit and loss? That's right. So I can do that in my head. So that's £94,800. Leaves our P&L figure is £90,640, and then that will obviously balance off at the same £90,800. Now that is a little bit more tricky, in my opinion. How did everyone else feel about that? I think that's well worth another go. Well, another question on the same topic, I'd say. So again, we've got another question. If we've got time, we will go back to those accruals questions, but everyone's doing so well. I thought we'd make sure we get these done and we'll worry about accruals as and down the line. So next one, first things first, it is a 31st of May year end, and we're looking at commission income. So commission income of £4,309, it was accrued as at the year end 31st of May 2007. So that is last year's income account, and of that, yes, I'm missing a before I did. So of the £4,309, that is income that we hadn't received last year, but we had earned it. So we'd earned the commission. So we've got two things in A, we've made some income, and B, we've got some asset. Someone owes us some money. So the double entry would be to bring in the accrued income last year would be debit accrued income. That's the asset that people owe us some money, and then credit commission because we've earned that money. So what is going to be our opening figure, or the figure that comes from accrued income, in our commission income account? Are we going to go debit or are we going to go credit? That's exactly right. I think we're getting this in the fact that although we're going to get the money this year, we haven't earned it this year. So if we put it on the debit side, so we put from here, it's going to come from accrued income. And that would be £4,390. And then what would potentially happen is in the following year, we get our commission paid monthly, say, and say we got that on the first in the first month of the financial year, we debit the bank with 4,390, and then we'd credit commission with 4,390. So the bank is now correct. However, our commission account shows zero commission because we've not earned anything as yet. So that would balance out. So as you see how our opening balance would then offset the receipt in the following year. So even though we have to debit the bank, so the bank must be correct, we're not showing any expense. So that was what happening really. You normally have an opening. When you reverse it, it offsets the first payment, and then it just clears out that amount during the year. But in this question, and as you will in the AAT exam, you just get one figure for the entire year. So Cashbook shows receipts for commission of £32,520. So that is money we received for commission. That's got to be correct. So we will debit the bank account with £32,520, and we will then credit commission with £32,520. Right, so let's bring you in here. So we are a May year end. Within our figure of £32,520, £10,140 of that related to the quarter ended 31st of July 2007. What are we going to do here? Have we got accrued or have we got deferred? That's right. Now this is a tricky one. Now in reality, this wouldn't happen because you would have a system in place where you do something and then after the event, you get your commission. And so that would be accrued income. And that system would carry on into the next year. So if you've got accrued income at the beginning of the year, you're going to have accrued income at the end of the year. And what you would do when you are an accountant to practice is when you want to make sure that you've got everything correctly in terms of accruals and repayments is you'd look at your accruals and payments from last year, and then you would look for the same accounts from this year, because things like commission, things like interest, things like rent, electricity, telephone bills, they all work on the same way. So if you get your telephone bill 1 month after the year end, and it's invoiced quarterly, and the following year your invoice will come 1 month after the year end, and so it will always be an accrual. But not in this case. Don't always assume that in the exam, you'll always get the same opening and closing accrual. Do not assume that. So you've got to be on the ball, which makes it a little bit tricky. But in reality, that's not how it would work, unless you've got very shoddy systems and you just invoice as and when you can be bothered. So we've received money for May, June, and July. May's fine, we'll keep that where it is, but we want to get rid of June and July. We've received it before we have earned it. So we're going to credit deferred income. And debit the commission account, because we don't want to recognise that amount of 6,760. £60. Cool. So we can now work out our profit and loss account figure. So remember, it's income. So this is actually going to go on the debit side. So that's going to go on here. So this is obviously going to balance off at 32,520. So at 32,520, we're going to take off, calculator, check. Anyone else want to clarify that? So 32,520 less. I'll just answer that, but I'll figure this out before I lose my train of thought. 52390 minus 6760, 21370. Yeah, so accrued income, accrued income of 4,390. So that was income that last year, so it was 31st of May 2007, we accrued. So that was money that last year we had earned, but we hadn't invoiced for. So we need to recognize the fact that as of last year, we'd earned that money. So we would have debited accrued income to show that we are owed £4,390 and credited commission with £4,390 to show that last year we have. Computer just died. Debited. So what we would do is reverse it. So we would then debit accrued income, the liability. No, it's good. In my head. So last year we would have debited accrued income, which is the expense, sorry, and credited income. Debited the asset, sorry. Debited the asset, credit income. So when we reverse it, we credit the asset because we no longer are owed that amount because we've we paid it, and debit accrued income because we have now, although we received the money, we don't want to recognize the fact that we've earned it this year because we haven't. So going over that again, last year we would debit the accrued income account to show we have an asset, and then credit the commission income account to show we've earned the money. Then this year, when we reverse it, we credit the accrued income account to show that we no longer have the asset because they've paid us this year, and then debit commission income because although we've received it this year, it doesn't belong in this year. So what we've used is accrued income and deferred income just to move the income about to the period to which it relates, irrespective of when it has been paid, which is what we want under the matching rule. So that accrued income is a debit this because it's an opening one, so it's reducing the amount of income that we have are recognizing this year because it was last year's income. Does that help? Cool. These are tricky questions. So let's have another go at another one. So again, and it's the same thing. You've got rental income and commission income, interest. They're the sort of typical ones you'll see, but the principles are all the same. Cool. So let's have another go. Again, first things first, get your head around the year end. It's a September 2004. It doesn't matter who writes the books. Deferred and accrued income is a tricky subject. And like you see, when we went through task 3 from the AAT sample assessments the other week, the accrued and deferred income weren't mentioned at all. It was all accruals and prepayments, but there was absolutely nothing to stop you getting accrued and deferred income question. It could easily come up. So it doesn't want to be one of those subjects where you think, I hope it doesn't come up, because it might not, and you're fine. But if it does come up, you're in a world of trouble if you don't know how to deal with them. It's just being very, very careful. And it's the same principles that we just want to move the income to the period to which it relates. That's all we're trying to do. And I was trying to sort of break these questions down, and accruals and prepayments, into, you know, basic, common sense and like plain English. Basically, is have we got something in our account, expense or income account, that we shouldn't have, in which case we need to get rid of it. So that's either deferred income or prepaid expenses. Have we got something in our account that, we have not got something in our account that we should have, in which case it's accrued income or prepaid expense. I'm doing a synoptic retake. Can you come up like this on the computer part? Good question. So I actually did a Facebook Live with AAT on the synoptic exam week before last. So I'm very clued up on this. In terms of AVBK in advanced synoptic, anything from advanced synoptic pretty much can come up in the ethics part of the exam. So that's task 1.1, 1.2, 1.3. The only thing from AVBK that can come up in the spreadsheets part is an ETB. You will never be asked about accruals and prepayments in the spreadsheets part of the advanced synoptic exam. But there's nothing to stop accrued and deferred income coming up in the ethics side of it, which will be, the questions will be very much like this, pretty much like this. There's no way to really change them, to be honest. Nope. Obviously, when you go in front of the AAT and there's like 300 people watching live, you get very clued up on what comes up. So in terms of the spreadsheets part, obviously you've got spreadsheets. They're going to come up. In terms of AVBK, you've got 2 tasks. You've got task 2.1. That will be costing. And it's pretty much every single thing from costing except for FIFO, LIFO, and AVCO, because they're just crap for doing in a spreadsheet, to be honest. It just doesn't work. But everything else from costing could come up in 2.1. And lots of things from costing work very well in spreadsheets, like NPV. They work very well. Target costing, that sort of thing. Process costing. Yeah, process costing doesn't work very well in spreadsheets, but I just need to check. I think that also comes into the bit that doesn't get assessed, but it's mainly FIFO, LIFO. Pretty much all of that comes up in 2.1. But the problem is, so, and it's the same thing. So for FAPR and advanced bookkeeping. So if I tell you that the only thing that's come up in spreadsheets from advanced bookkeeping is ETBs, which it is, and the only thing that come up from FAPR in task 2.2 is profit, appropriation counts, goodwill, and incomplete records, they're the only 2 things that could come up in 2.1. So you're like, well, that's great, but you can't just ignore fixed asset registers, accruals and prepayments, bad debts, or anything like that, because it could come up in the ethics section. So whilst I'm saying you won't need to do like FIFO and LIFO in a spreadsheet, you can't just say, I don't want to learn it, because you'll need to know it for the ethics side. So in effect, you need to know everything from AVBK, FAPR, and MAAC for advanced synoptic, although certain things will only ever be in spreadsheets. but you can't just dismiss them. Is remember for advanced is credit P&L account, debit balance for accrued, and deferred income is debit P&L. Martina, that works for me, and if it works for you, I'm a happy man. Cool. Anyway, let's not dwell. If you haven't already, get yourself signed up for the AVSY revision classes with Becky. She's getting rave feedback for them. I've given up trying to win the who's got the most students in their revision session competition. She is amazing. The only concern is she's about to have a baby, and she's going to go off. I'm a bit concerned that'll land on my desk, but it's not. Yeah. Get yourself signed up for AVSY. They are amazing. If she, well, she's going to go away and have a baby, but we've already got someone else lined up who's very clued up on all her fantastic Mentimeters and things like that. They are amazing. And don't forget, FAPR, MAAC, indirect tax, level 3, they're all starting. If you know, we're going to run them until forever, really. And obviously, if you move on to level 4, level 4. Cool. Right, let's Sarah, FAPR, is it back on tomorrow? I don't know is the answer, but from what we had a meet about it today, if it's not on tomorrow, it is on next week. Is it Tracy who's doing them? It is. Oh, Jill, she knows more than me. Cool. Yes, I believe they are. Oh, Leanne. Yeah, I like Leanne. They're back on tomorrow. Yeah. So because they were kind of set up. The history of, just conscious of time, but the history of, they were set up to sort of help classroom students before, as for apprentices or something, and they went really well. We opened up to loads of other people, and it went really well. We opened up to everyone. It went really well. So some were set up until the end of June to get the exam students through, but now we just gone like, it's gone really well. Why wouldn't you help anyone? No, you don't have to re-register. It's the same link that you've always had. Don't worry about that. All the recordings are going on YouTube, so don't worry if you miss a session, it's all going to go on there. And the roll on, roll off. So if you missed fixed asset registers or whatever from my AVBK one, you can either watch the recording on YouTube or we're going to cover it again. We're just going to roll and roll and roll till December at the earliest. Cool. Right, let's get cracking. Because it's already that time already. So what we're looking at. So let's, as before with any other accruals or prepayments question, don't get giddy and look at commission and rental. Let's just look at rental. So we have got accrued rental income from the previous period. She might have changed it, but we've set it up so you register once and that is it. She might have changed it if it's ended, but once you're registered, you shouldn't ever need any other logons or anything like that. Just click on the link, it'll run forever, or at least December. So rental income accounts, we had opening accrued rental income. So that is rental income that last year we had earned but not received. So that was accrued. Is this going to be a credit or a debit in this year's rental income account? That's right, because last year we had earned it, we just hadn't received it. This year we're going to receive it, we haven't earned it. So accrued income is going to be a debit to reduce the income this year, which is 10,600. Then we have a figure from the bank. Don't mess with the bank. So that is going to be on the credit side. And that is £46,000. Now, we've got something different here. Now, an invoice, in November 2004, an invoice was issued, so we're sending them out, remember, because it's our money. We issued it in November for £18,000 for the quarter ended October. So is this accrued or deferred income? So our year ends September. We sent the invoice out in November. And it's for the quarter ended October anyway. That's exactly right. So it's for the quarter ended October. It's clearly not going to be in the amount that we've received because we sent the invoice out way after the year end. So it's for the quarter ended October. So you've got October, September, August. We're a September year end. How many months are we going to accrue? That's right. So we're going to debit accrued income because that is the asset of someone owes us some money, and then credit rental because we have earned the money, even though we've not invoiced it, or we need to reflect in this year that we have earned it. So accrued income of, and how much will it be? It's going to be, I'll say it. That's exactly right, Natalie. £12,000. It's 2/3 of £18,000. Goes on the credit side. So then our profit figure, so that's going to be 48. No, it's not. It's going to be £58,000. And then our P&L figure on the debit side. Does anyone have a stab at that? P and L. That will be, that's going to be £58,000. 47,400. Does that look right? Take the 600, leaves us 47. Yeah, that looks right. £47,400, less than 600. Cool. It's not too bad. Is that a little bit easier? Cool. Right, let's do one more. It's 8 minutes to 8. Let's do one more. What have we got here? So we've got deferred commission. So this is commission that was deferred last year. I'll not explain it too much longer. Credit or debit? Yep, that's right. So I don't want to explain it. So what this was commission that we received last year, but we hadn't earned it as yet. So we deferred it, i.e. saying we don't want to recognize it because A, we might have to pay it back, and B, it doesn't belong in this year. So we would have debited commission income and credited deferred income to show that we've got a liability. So the deferred income is a liability, and debited commission income to reduce the income expense income account last year. So we're going to reverse it, debit deferred income to remove that liability, who's now earned it, and then credit commission to recognize the fact we've earned money. So that'd be deferred income, and that would be the £12,200. Then the bank receipts of £52,000. Don't argue with the bank, it is the bank. So that would be debit bank, credit the commission income of £52,000. And that's going to balance off that 64,200. This includes £9,000 in respect for the premium 31st of March 2005. I think this should actually say commission, but the principle is the same. What are we going to do? We've received £9,000 relates to commission to the year ended March 2005. That's right, 6 months. So we've received £9,000 for money that we haven't earned as yet. So we're going to, we owe it as at the year end. We might have to pay it back if we haven't earned it. So we would debit commission income with £4,500, and then we'd credit deferred income with £4,500 to say we've got a liability because we might have to pay it back. So exactly right. So then just need our P&L figure for the year. So I'm just going to clear it out. 64,200 minus the 4,500. Everyone's faster than me. Gives us £59,700. That would balance off £64,200. Cool. What did everyone think to that? I know it's a little bit trickier than accruals and payments expenses, but hopefully it's a little less trickier than what it was 55 minutes ago. Like I say, these are not as common as accruals and prepayments, but there's not to say they can't come up. But yeah, like Sarah says, RTBQ, read the bloody question. If you do not, it's so much, it's the time you spent, just look at a question, get it clear in your mind as to what everything relates to in terms of periods, what your year end is well worth doing. There is no skill in rushing through the exam. No one gets extra marks for finishing early. The trick to this, well, all AAT exams, is work slowly and methodically through it. Make sure you know what you need to do. Do it once. And if you don't have to repeat yourself or cross things out or start again, you will have plenty of time. Cool. Yeah, has anyone got any questions about anything really? Don't forget, we've got our 25% off the PQ Online College of the Year. I'd like to think there's a chance next week that when we go through AVBK, there'll be an AAT Tutor of the Year trophy up there. Maybe. Fingers crossed. The recording should be, did we go through it? Right, we've very, very quickly, let's rattle through this one here, and then I know that this one is done. Quickly. So we're looking at accruals and prepayments. The first one is rent. Do not, now, looking back in our mindset, it is rent, it's an expense, so it's a prepayment of rent. So last year, it's an expense we prepaid, so we didn't want to show it. Is that going to be a debit or credit in our rental account this year? So last year we prepaid it, so we would have paid for it, but we don't want to show the expense. So it's right, it would be a debit because we don't want to show that amount. But now, this year, we have incurred it, so we do want to show it. So we would then credit the prepayment account because we've now lost the asset of the use of the rent, and we debit the rental expense because we've incurred it. Next one is the business. It is what was paid, so don't adjust that, which is £12,900. And then what have we got here? So that was for the period of 28th of February 2006. Remember, we are an August year end. So what we're going to do here, the 31st of August. So we're going to prepay so much. How much are we going to prepay? So we were at August year end. So be careful here. Count your fingers. September, October, November, December, January, February. So 6 months of that does not belong in our year end. So are we going to debit or credit our rental expense account? That's right. So we don't want to show that. Although we paid for it, we don't show it. So that would be half of that would be £6,450 off the top of my head. And then we'll put in our P&L figure, which goes in here. So that would be £13,700, which would give us an expense of 13,700. Someone's going to beat me to it. Minus 6,450. It is, as Sarah said, £7,250. £100. Cool. Now, cool. I'm glad we actually got this actually, because we've been asked to calculate the figure for light and heat. Just light and heat. We don't want a full T account. Do a T account in this sort of question. It's very, very easy to make a mistake trying to do this sort of thing in your head or in the calculator. Remember, you'll get working paper in your exam, unless you sit remotely. I don't believe you'll get working paper to sit remotely, but cross that bridge when we come to it. So last year we had an accrual of light and heat of £2,100. So that was expense that we incurred last year but hadn't received. Is that going to be a credit or a debit in our light and heat account this year? So it's something we accrued for last year. We want to show it in. That's right. So last year we would have debited light and heat, credit accruals. We're going to reverse it, debit accruals, credit light and heat with £2,100. And that's from accruals. Then we've got a bank figure, £8,700. £700. However, £4,200 was so an invoice on October 2005 was received, which remember we're an August year end, so it's received after the year end, and it's related to the quarter ended September 2005 for an August year end. How many months are we going to adjust for, and is it bringing in or getting rid? Or accrued or prepaid is the technical term, but put it in layman's terms. What are we doing with this quarter ended September 2005? We're at August 2005 year end. That's right. So we're going to bring in 2 months. So we haven't put in our figures for July and August. We don't want to bring in September. We don't care about that. It's not relevant, basically. So we're going to take 4,200 divide by 3 times by 2. We want to bring that in, which is 2,800. Remember, it's normally always a nice figure. So it's going to be accruals of 2,800, and then we can do our P&L figure here, which is the figure we're looking for. So 2,800 plus 8,700 gives us £11,500, which if we take off everyone will beat me to it, no doubt, £9,400, which is the figure we are looking at. Cool, we're done. That's a bit more straightforward, isn't it? It's dead straightforward. Just make sure you do a T count. Don't try to do it without a T count. It's asking for trouble. Joanna, if you sign up to us for level 4 with a 25% discount, we will help you with Synoptic for free. Can't say fairer than that. Can't say fairer. I can't guarantee to pass, but if you do your work, if you do your mock, send them in for marking, there's a very, very good chance you will pass. There's a massive link between students who do mocks, who do really well in an exam, especially in that unit. If you don't do your mocks, well, you've only got yourself to blame. But yeah, sign to level 4. You'll get an email from your tutor. Just tell them I said it was okay, and we will help you with advanced synoptic. So don't worry about that. Cool. Right. We will carry on with this. It will be me this time next week. It'll be me for the next few weeks, and I'll send a recording out as and when I've got it, and I'll see you all next week. Like I say. Yeah, like I say, don't forget about our mock product, and don't forget our Facebook Lives on Monday and Wednesday evening, and revision sessions. Sign up for as many as you want. Cool. All right, everyone have a good evening. Any questions, queries, just get in touch. You should have my email, and I'll see you all next week.